Hey, this is Pat Flynn from Fiddlehead, and you're listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we're back with another brand new episode. And on the show this week, we have Viggy Ram, vocalist of Drought. Drought just released their debut LP called Souvenir this past week on Iodine Recordings. It's excellent. I hope everybody out there is listening to it. And this conversation with Viggy is excellent. We cover his history, the history of the band. There's some good mental health and pandemic survival discussion. We talk about how Viggy was away from music for a little bit. We talk about how he came back to it. We talk about him coming up in the scene in the Bay Area. And of course, we cover the whole history of Drought and the making of their debut LP, Souvenir, which has guest spots from Mom Jeans and Pat Flynn from Fiddlehead. It's a great all-around conversation, and I can't wait for you to hear it. That's coming up shortly, but first, here's how you can support The New Scene. Rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a main channel with full video episodes and a clips channel with clips from select episodes. We have shirts for sale at our store at Death Wish Inc. Pick one up. It's a great way to support the show. And you can follow us on social media at New Scene Pod. Also, don't forget to support Iodine Recordings. The debut LP from Drought, Souvenir, is out now, and you will hear more about that shortly when we talk to Viggy. Make sure you pick up the vinyl and listen to it on the streaming service of your choice. As the Sun Sets, the complete discography from Iodine Recordings, this is all of their recorded material spanning 1999 to 2002, is available now to order from Iodine Recordings. All tracks were remixed by Kurt Ballou from Converge and God City Studios, and remastered by producer Jack Shirley. And it has all new artwork. I love As the Sun Sets. I was just talking about them recently. Their debut LP, that is a classic. Make sure you pick this up. The All Dead Bars Go to Heaven record release show is taking place Thursday, August 21st at Belltown Yacht Club in Seattle, Washington. And Stretch Armstrong, the 20th anniversary reissue of Free at Last, is available now for pre-order via Iodine Recordings. There's 5 different vinyl variants, so make sure you pick one up before they're gone because this will go fast. For more information, head to iodinerecordings.com. Sign up for the newsletter. You'll find out about everything first, and you can follow the label on Instagram at Iodine Recordings. And say hello to our sponsor for the month of July, Evil Greed. In addition to their online store, Evil Greed offers tour merch, merch handling, and logistics services for tons of bands. They also offer merch and distribution solutions for bands and record labels in Europe and the UK. Evil Greed has a carefully selected roster of artists and labels in their online store. They offer very reasonable worldwide shipping rates specifically to the UK and the USA. So make sure you head to evilgreed.net. They've always got the latest merch, the latest updates, premiere records, all of that. All right, let's see what's going on at Evil Greed this week. We've got merch from Sun. We've got merch from Brutus. We've got merch from Blood Incantation. We've got new merch from Sun. We've got new merch from Der Weg Enir Freiheit. We've got new merch from Agriculture. We've got new merch from The Hotelier. We've got new merch from Spy Giants. A whole selection of new shirts here. Military Gun. We've got new Military Gun shirts. I hope you're heading over to evilgreed.net to check these all out. We've got a new LP from Der Weg Enir Freiheit. It's called Inern. We've got a new LP from Agriculture called The Spiritual Sound. We've got a new LP from Higher Power called There's Love in This World If You Want It. We've got a new LP from Lathe of Heaven called Aurora. And of course, the new LP from Drain called Is Your Friend. We've got more new music from Spiritual Cramp. Stretch Armstrong, Free at Last, the pre-order is up. Deftones, Private Music, the new LP from Deftones. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. Private Music, the new LP, up for pre-order at evilgreed.net. And make sure you check out the Evil Greed Essentials. I'm looking at the list of records right now, and there's a bunch of good ones in here, most of which I own. For more information, head to evilgreed.net, and you can follow them on Instagram at evil_greed. Okay, so check back in with me after the conversation with Viggy. We'll check in. We haven't done it in a while. We'll do a wrap-up of the conversation with Viggy. We'll talk about some other recent interviews I've done. We'll read YouTube comments. We'll cover everything. But right now, we are going to speak to Viggy Ram of Drought. Enjoy. All right, we are here now with Viggy Ram. Viggy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm excited to have you here. I've had RJ on the show, and I have you now. And I very unexpectedly met you late last year, which we'll get to that. And of course, Drought has their debut LP coming out. It's called Souvenir. And I'm very excited to hear the rest of it because I love everything I've heard from the band so far. But look, we'll get to all that, Viggy. But first, I want to ask you, how are you doing today?
I'm good. We're a month out from the record dropping, and it feels a little bit like you're spending all your time trying to do all this planning, right? It feels like you're like planning a wedding or like a birthday party, and then everything's ready to go, and you're just waiting, which is kind of the stressful part of the process. But I'm feeling good. I'm really excited to see how things go.
How long have you been waiting?
Goodness, we recorded in February, so not that long. I think there are a lot of bands that probably wait like a year or 2 years sometimes to put their record out, but we moved pretty quickly.
That's good. Yeah, only a few months is good. Well, I waited a year with my latest band because, that was just when the labels could do it and when the vinyl could be done and everything. So I went through a whole myriad of emotions from like, I can't wait anymore. It doesn't exist anymore. It's coming up. Like I would like completely forget about it. And then right before it's coming out is like the worst because I'm like, I just need it to be out. It just has to come out. I'm done with this.
Yeah. There's also something about like having it in your hand that's way different than, you've got the material somewhere and being able to like look at it, be like, hey, we finished this. It's
such a great thing. Like I had Tim Singer on the show recently, and he was talking about people like us in bands, and he's like, we have something to look back on. Like, we can look back on the records, the shows, the bands, the experiences. Like, or he's like, people that don't have that, what do they look back on? And it's true. Like, I don't know. I went to high school. I went to college. That's not as cool.
That's right. I mean, I guess when I was, I was in a couple of bands when I was younger, and one of them recorded, and I still have the CD. It's not one of the. I didn't have it from them then. I ended up finding it at a library, like a Friends of a Library sale. And I was like, oh my God, this is my old band's record. And so I bought it and still have it. And it's really nice. It's like a good memento.
So you actually found your old band's record and purchased it.
I did. It was like $20. And I remember telling the lady who was working there, I was like, this is my band. And she was like, I don't care.
No, but you don't understand. I don't have this. It's like, I don't care.
Please get me through my day. Yeah.
So you said you're in Toronto for work before we hit record. What do you do?
I am a lawyer and I do public policy work.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. Explain some of that if you can and if you want to and if you're able to.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so I spent the early part of my career mostly doing civil rights advocacy work. So was really heavily involved in the same-sex marriage movement in the 2000s, was a policy director for an ACLU affiliate in the Midwest, made a jump to some urbanism related stuff. So now I work on mobility policy. And so, in Toronto, which is a great mobility city, there are a ton of good, there's a ton of good public transit. It's very walkable. It's been great.
Yeah. So if you're out there, what do you do? Do you have to meet with prospective clients, or another law office? Like, what's the deal?
Mostly governments. So I'm just meeting with like the Minister of Transportation and other folks like that. It's very interesting. Funny enough, there are a lot of secret punks in the policy world, which always kind of throws me for a loop. So every once in a while I'll meet with someone and find out that they're in a hardcore band, or doing something else that's kind of interesting on the side, and we'll end up hitting it off. And it's kind of, I had a friend a long time ago who told me that, like, in the sort of policy legal world, like, most people, it's kind of a problematic term because of, J.K. Rowling's politics and all of that. But she was like, people who don't know about punk are muggles. And like the rest of us, we like are part of like a secret society. And when you like meet someone, it's like, oh my God, like, I feel like I'm connecting with you on something that's a lot deeper than just, what pays the bills.
Yeah, I have found that, I mean, I can carry a conversation if I want to, but I find I'm really just not that interested in it unless it's someone like yourself or someone who like really knows this music. And I mean, really knows it, because I hate the situation where it's like, oh, you like music? What do you listen to? I have to name like 5 bands now, and they're not going to know any of them, and I'm going to feel like an idiot. But if you meet someone who is actually into the same stuff as you, I get a jolt. Like, I can really talk about it.
Yeah, I still go up to strangers and tell them nice shirt. It's like a little thing, and but there's something kind of nice about feeling like, hey, here's this music that made me feel a little less alone, and there's other people that hopefully it made feel the same way.
Yeah, I mean, this music has basically been my whole life. But so you grew up in Toronto, partially.
Partially, and then the Bay Area. I got involved in music in the Bay Area.
Okay. So when did you move to the Bay Area? Why? How?
I was in high school. My mom got a job. My dad stayed in Canada for almost 4 years. So was kind of shuttling back and forth during those 4 years. And then eventually my dad moved out too, but by then I was already moving out of the house. And yeah, like moving to the Bay Area is when I first sort of had my musical awakening, I guess you'd say, where, found a lot of community, started playing in the first bands I played in. Most of the friends that I have to this day are folks that I met during that time.
How old were you when you got involved in all that?
I think I started my first band when I was 14 or 15.
What year was it?
Ooh.
Around.
It was like 2001, 2002 would be the period.
That's around the same time I was really getting involved with this music. I found it in 98, and I was heavily involved in until 2003, I guess, and then I would come in and out. But so you're in San Francisco in 2001. What kind of bands are you seeing? What kind of stuff is grabbing you?
Ooh, great question. I was it was a little bit of everything, like there was definitely like a NorCal Deftones sound that seemed like it was everywhere. So you kind of couldn't avoid that. So of course, really enjoyed the Deftones. But I remember in 2000, maybe 2001, the first sort of big concert I went to was Jimmy Eat World and Weezer. And then I want to say that same year I caught Glassjaw, Earth Crisis, and Drowning Man. And that was like a very like, oh, I didn't know music could sound like this. And it sort of like gave me a big left turn. And then, and I think like, when you're young, all your friends are into all kinds of stuff, right? Like it's never like, you're just like, oh, you're also into alternative music. It doesn't matter what it is. It could, the person could just be like, I love Gwar and Cannibal Corpse. And you'd be like, great, like we're friends now,
Exactly. There was kids who mostly listened to grind, or kids who mostly listened to metal, or kids who mostly listened to emo. I could be friends with anybody. It didn't matter. It was like all one thing. I still kind of view it like that now.
Yeah, I hope so. We get to like meet a lot of kids at our shows and stuff, and like it definitely, in some ways, it feels more diverse than ever. So it's been that part of playing now is really neat.
So when you got started playing in bands, were you a vocalist mainly?
I was. I've always played. In my younger years, I took like Indian classical music lessons, and then I played the violin and sang as well. So it came pretty naturally to start out with singing. I've played the bass in bands as well, but singing has been kind of the main sort of instrument that I have.
Yeah. Wow. So you got started early, 14. I mean, what kind of bands were you in? Was it scary for you at all to jump in and get involved that young?
Yeah, of course. It's I was my first band was a new metal band. We had a DJ and everything. um, and it's funny. I actually still keep in touch with the guitarist from that band. He's gone on to be a recording engineer and has recorded like Story So Far and Basement. And I think the most recent thing he did was 100th. And so he's still involved in our little world, pretty significantly. But yeah, we were both just in this silly new metal band. But we got to play, when it started out, we were playing like Battle of the Bands and like house shows or whatever we could, anyone who would let us play. But by the end of it, which would have been like 2004-ish, we had some really good opportunities. We got to play with Alexis on Fire and with Between the Buried and Me and all these bands that we really looked up to. It was a little bit awkward for a new metal band, but it was still fun.
Nice. I like that there was some crossover because, new metal has its roots in a lot of hardcore stuff now, but that was not the case in 2003. I feel like there was more of a division. Now, at that time, new metal was huge, right? But nobody in the hardcore scene was like, oh yeah, Korn is awesome, or oh yeah, Limp Bizkit is awesome. It was like, no, like at least with who I was associating with, it was like, this is hardcore and that's new metal and that's that.
Yeah, I think that was definitely right. But then sometimes you would like hear like there's that Earth Crisis record Slither that like really borders on, or like you'd see some bands that like would really straddle that line pretty closely. I think, at some point I saw Glassjaw play with Alien Ant Farm and Edema, and it was just a completely absurd bill, right? Like those bands would never play together now, but back then,
And yeah, the influence was in there because I got into hardcore in the late 90s and I would be on message boards with older guys and I'd be like, listen to this band, listen to this band. And they would call all the music new metal. They'd be like, this is new metal, this is new metal. So like, but yeah, I can hear it now, like Disembodied. There's some new metal influence. Living Sacrifice, that one record that I really like. Hammering Process, definite new metal influence there. It was there because that's what was big at the time.
totally, totally. I wonder what that's going to be, how people are going to look back on now. Like, bands there's like a lot of like beatdown influence in hardcore right now. There's a lot of sort of fastcore stuff that's happening. And I'm wondering whether people are going to look back and really think of it as being of an era, because like the new metal stuff, when I hear it, like I'm like, oh my God, like that is 2001. Like it sounds like 2001.
They will, because we're on like sub 7 level of Knocked Loose now. Like you'll hear that you'll hear that copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a really down tuned band with like, I don't know, and it's like too technical and there's a lot of squeals thrown in, and I'm like, okay, all right, we've maxed that out. We've maxed that out.
That's hilarious.
All right, so you're in high school, you're playing in bands, you're living in San Francisco. What do you want to do? Do you have any vision of like what you want to do in the future? Do you want to do music full time? Did you already have your sights set on law school? What was going on with you?
So I was a pretty bad kid. I think, would sneak out at night with my friends, get into stuff. I don't know, like and I think we were in a suburb in the Bay Area, just outside of San Jose, and there was not a lot to do, right? Like there weren't a ton of all ages spaces. Not until like I actually like really got into music did I really like understand that was available. So, we would just sneak out, go to the high school, set trash can fires, or like, and get ourselves into trouble. And so I don't know that I had like a really clear sense of things. I think like two of my friends back then were incarcerated for setting trash can fires, and that sort of set me on a path to being interested in civil rights advocacy work. Thinking about at the time, like the same-sex marriage movement was like really picking up steam as well. And it was one of those things where like, I think I looked out there and I could just think of like my friends who were gay or queer, and and you're young and you're energetic, and like I think like I really wanted to do something about that. And I think like the music scene was also pretty, like in some ways it was a good respite, but it was also still like a lot of white dudes, everywhere you look. Anytime I'd see someone that was like a person of color or someone who's brown like me, I'd be like, oh my God, I have to meet them. I have to be their friend. Like it was a way, that was my only way to like to really feel like kind of like more deeply connected. But I think I like struggled on trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Ended up pursuing music, I think just because like at some point I got kind of burnt out from the music scene. And got into law and politics and policy. And then now during the pandemic is when I sort of like really shifted back to wanting to be involved in music again. It had kind of felt like I'd spent like 15 years not doing this thing that I really, really, really love. And that's actually not just true for me. It's true for a couple of the other members of the band as well.
Right. Yeah, I that happened for me during the pandemic too. I've had years where I've been involved and not been involved, but I thought I was done. I thought I would never be in a band again. I thought it was just over. But then I started this podcast on a whim, and magically 5 years later, I've ended up in a couple bands since. But I'm curious about you. When did you start college, law school, all of that? Like, how old were you?
I went to college in Santa Cruz in 2004. I think I was like pretty excited because like Angela Davis taught there. It's kind of, there was a pretty incredible punk scene at the time. There was a venue underneath one of the dining halls that I saw Hot Cross play at, and Limbeck and all these bands back then. Funeral Diner, and there's a really great band out of the Bay Area back then called Under a Dying Sun that would play down there as well. So it was like it seemed like the vibes were right. Like I wanted to work on like the civil rights work. I really wanted to continue at least like knowing that music scene would be there for me, and so it really matched what I was looking for. And then after I finished, I spent like probably, I want to say like 4 years doing other sorts of like organizing work. I lived in LA for a little bit and then went to law school in Sacramento.
Okay. While you're going to school and being involved with organizing and all that, are you still involved with the music scene? Are you in bands? Are you doing all that?
No, I was in a band for like maybe 6 or 7 months in 2009. And then, but I would still put on shows. Like I would work with some friends. I set up a show. There was another great Bay Area band called Comadre that we would book shows for. And it's funny because like their guitarist ended up recording the Drought record, which is great. But we booked a show for them on the UC Santa Cruz campus. I booked a couple of shows in the East Bay for a bit in Oakland, but yeah, it just wasn't as involved. I'd still go. I'd still like show up and support. Still listen to, I think even now I listen to like an absurd amount of music, but like back, I was still listening to a lot of stuff. It just wasn't as. I think I just didn't have it in me to maybe I just didn't know what I wanted to sing about or what I'd wanted the band to be about. And like you said, like during the beginning of the pandemic, there was a sense in which it was like, oh my goodness, I'm spending all this time with myself. And how could I stop doing this thing that was like a limb? It's like something that's like so important to you, something that you've spent your whole life loving. And then you've somehow like decided not to do it. It's like, no, like, like how, so it was really nice to come back.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you just get busy with life and growing up and work. That's what happened to me. 2003, when This Day Forward broke up, I went on tour with them a couple times. So when they broke up, I lost touch for a little bit, and then I got involved in different kinds of underground music, and then I was in my own band for the first time, so that took up time. And then there were years where I was like too high or drunk and I couldn't pull it together enough to start another band or anything like that. And then there's years of working on my career and traveling and just being busy. So I don't know. It's you're just like out there in the world, right? And there's other things going on. But then the pandemic, when the pandemic hit, I reconnected with a lot of things that there's a lot of time, right? So I reconnected with a lot of things that I had not touched in a long time. I got really into retro gaming and gaming in general. I started this podcast and made it weekly. So then I'm talking to all my old friends and different bands and reconnecting with a lot of this music. So that kind of sent me on the trajectory to where I am now. How about for you? Like, what happened during the pandemic for you?
Yeah. I was in a pretty dark place at the end of 2019. I think like even outside of the pandemic.
How so? What was going on?
I'd been in this, I think I found myself like not just lying to myself about like the kind of person I wanted to be or what I want to be doing, but I think to like other people as well. I think it and it sort of ate me up from the inside. I wasn't a good friend. I wasn't a good partner. Wasn't a good member of my family. And it's really hard to be kind to other people when you can't be kind to yourself. And at the end of 2019, I had a really close call with trying to take my own life, and having the pandemic sort of happen like almost like right after was kind of jarring. Like like in some ways it was like forced confrontation. I was seeing a therapist at the time. Like she was great. She was actually like one of the only people I was able to talk to on like a super regular basis, but would end up spending a lot of time by myself. And then, I think like, the George Floyd uprisings and protests were happening in 2020. And I would like skateboard over to some of those rallies and stuff. And I was like trying to find like a way to get the energy and passion that I have for life and being a good person. I think like, you were talking about drinking and partying and all of that. And, I think I kind of went through something very, if not similar, I can understand what it's like to feel like you're sort of chasing the dragon a little bit, and then it catches up to you and you're like, who am I? Like, do I want to be this kind of person? And so that sort of afterward, it sort of spurred, going back earlier, I mentioned that I wasn't sure what I wanted to sing about or what I had to say. And I think that was the moment where I was like, maybe I do actually have something to say about this. Like, and there's something that's like healing for me. And maybe other people will connect to it a little bit. But I started writing. I started, a lot of like poetry and stories and stuff. And it was a really good way for me to kind of work through my own inner demons. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm very happy that you made it through that. Were you living by yourself during the pandemic?
I was not. I had 2 roommates, but it was still like difficult. I'd had like a breakup right before. I finding your identity after like stuff like that is hard. So
Incredibly. I had a breakup during the pandemic. So late into the pandemic, I had to learn how to live by myself, and I didn't have a ton of people that I hung out with, and I spent a lot of time alone. I spent like almost the next 4 years alone, like because I wasn't in a band and I did the podcast from home, and so it took a very long time to get out of that and start to connect with people more. And I'm so glad that I do now, because when I look back on that, I'm like, oh my God, that was wild.
Yeah. I think about it like because we're actually like coming up on. This has been December 2019, so it's probably been like it's been almost like 5.5 years since I had that, brush with brush with like trying to take my own life. And I think that's a yeah. I feel like a different person in some ways, but also like a more authentic version of myself at this point.
So how does Drought get started?
I'd had a Craigslist alert from I want to say like 2006 or 2007. I was looking for bandmates who were into. I had a bunch of bands listed, but Comadre was one of them. And our guitarist Eric put up a Craigslist ad seeking musicians for a band influenced by Comadre, Pianos Become the Teeth, Have Heart. And so I reached out and said, "Hey, would love, to meet." So we went and got dinner one night, and then he mentioned that he had a drummer he's been working with or talking to, and we met up, and it turned out I knew that drummer. Like Ray, our drummer, and I have known each other since high school, practically. And so I was like, oh my God, like maybe this is meant to be. Our other guitarist, so RJ, ended up joining maybe 6 or 7 months later. He met Eric at some barbecue, and they ended up chatting music. And pretty quickly, he came by the space and got to hear the stuff. And now here we are.
Nice. Yeah, I've had some success on Craigslist with finding bandmates. So it's I'm glad to hear that it's still out there and still working.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that like it's been around for that long and it's still the exact same website. Like every other website on the internet gets redesigned. It looks really flashy, but Craigslist looks the exact same.
I really hope it never changes.
Same. But yeah, so we were a Craigslist band.
I love that. I don't know if there's somewhere better to find fellow musicians too. When I was looking, this was in like 2017. I couldn't find another site that like with that many people. I don't know if there's a better one out there.
Yeah, totally. There were probably some message boards here and there, but like especially when you're away from music for a long time, like it's a lot harder. Like now, if I wanted to go start a band, it's like we're playing with folks all the time. I know like plenty of folks that are looking to jam or write some music or whatever. But when you're just trying to get in, that's the hardest point, right? Because you don't know, like you need someone else that kind of feels the same way you do. Like, oh, I haven't done this in a bit. Like, would you be willing to kind of experiment and see what we can figure out?
Right. Yeah. I'm particular with who I would want to play with, right? Because if it's hard for me to join a band and learn everything. I've done it a couple times. So depending on the band, I could do it. But at this stage in my life, it would have to be a situation with Drought. Like I meet somebody who has very similar taste to me and we build it from the ground up. Like that's pretty much the only way I'd want to do it these days.
For sure. Is that how Memory Entry came together, or was it?
Yeah, that was a very long, slow, organic process. Like the original lineup was 2 guys I've known for a very long time, and then our new drummer John. I was in the Darling Fire with him in 2023, and then I thought I was done with music, and then I went to a Darling Fire show, and they were like, "Hey, we need a bass player. Do you want to join?" And I was like, "I don't know." But then I took a day to think about it, and I did, and that's how I met John, who's in Memory Entry with me now. So it was like a pretty organic process of me joining bands again, and I'm
That's
glad
awesome.
it happened. Because I thought I was done. I was like, I'm never going to be in a band again. I'm too old. No one wants to play with me. Everybody's already got their friends. It's too late. So I'm glad things happened the way they did. Was it like that for you? Like, did you think you were done? Did you miss being in bands? Did you really want to do it again?
Yeah, I missed it a ton. And I think once we started writing, it became clear that, we felt like this is just really enjoyable. Like I love working with these guys. We spend a lot of time on our songwriting, and I think I really missed that process, and being able to talk about like everything from why you're choosing a melody or a beat or or the words that or the lyrics to a song, it's a wonderful thing to have this sort of like regular collaboration and creative partnership, and it goes like so much deeper, right? Like when you're writing music with people, it becomes pretty intimate. Like you learn a lot about each other, and you also know how to annoy each other. You know how to get under people's skin. And I didn't realize how much I kind of weirdly missed that. Like, it's like, oh, cool. Like, I actually feel like I'm really getting to know someone, as opposed to like in most of life, you're like kind of just walking by folks and not really like getting deep in that way.
Exactly. Like, the people in my band are the people I talk to the most, and probably who I know the best and who know me the best, because I don't do a ton of socializing unless it's with my really good friends who are all back in Pennsylvania. Like I don't hang out a ton. Like I work on this show. I like working on the band as much as possible, and that's it. Like, how about you?
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit of a social butterfly, but it did. One of the things about like being away from the scene and coming back was it really surprised me how quickly it was like breathing air again. There were so many other folks in the scene who have been around for, since I was playing music when I was younger. And, some of those, like one of those folks, we now book a music festival together every year in the Bay Area. We had our second one this past year. And he's been playing music the whole time. So like, it's kind of interesting. I came back and, it was cool to have like a collaborator that I've known for a long time that would be down to book a festival. But even in the sort of like broader scene, you run into someone who at this point, they might have kids, they might be a little bit older, but like they're still around, and it's almost inspiring, because if they could do it, why can't I? Why can't I keep this going?
Exactly. So when Drought gets started, we know we recorded the self-titled EP. What happens? Do you record it first and then send it around, or like I'm wondering how you first got involved with Iodine?
Oh God, we recorded it with really no. I don't think we had clear aspirations of what we wanted to do. We just wanted to memorialize that we'd written those 3 songs. And we kept talking about how, we were in bands when we were younger. Sometimes they didn't record. And we were like, we have to like put this somewhere. And after we put it out, we had a pretty decent response. And then I booked our first show, and it was with some absolutely stellar bands. There's 2 emo bands from Portland, Mauve and Growing Pains, who are coming through on tour. And then a great screamo band from the LA Inland Empire area called Othiel. And then there's a local band called Mau. And we booked the show for all of us we all played it together, and it was packed, like absolutely packed out. And based on how well that show went, our next 2 shows were with City of Caterpillar. And then the one after that was with Widow Dusk and a number of sort of younger screamo bands. But it was crazy. Like all 3 of those shows just absolutely sold out. And then our 4th show ended up being with Jerome's Dream. And I think after we played that show, Eric, their drummer, actually like sent our demo over to Iodine. And I think someone else had actually whispered in their ear as well. Our friend Tom, Man Alive Creative, he's an old friend of our guitarist RJ, and he also sent our EP over to Iodine on the same day. So I think the folks over there heard the record, and they were like, well, if these folks are saying we should check it out, like, let's see what happens. I still think it's kind of crazy that they signed us with 3 songs and having played 4 shows, but whatever, not my business.
Right? Just go with it.
Yeah.
That's amazing that 2 people sent it over the same day, right? Like, do you guys ever talk about that? Like, wow, like people, because I don't know. I've always had a hard time with everything I've done musically. Like, I've had to fight for every band, every show, every opportunity. So like for two people to just send it over to a label and then the label to get in touch with you, that's got to be a nice surprise, right?
Yeah, it was surreal. I think, there's so many bands on the label that we've all loved and, listened to since we were kids. So we were like, all right, like, let's see where this goes. It still ended up taking like a good, like 6 months after that before we ended up, making anything happen. But, it was like pouring gasoline on a small fire. Like at that, like it helped us book our first tour. So we ended up touring the West Coast at the beginning of 2024, and then continued to play some really fun shows, like Hard Times shows, books in the Bay Area, and they booked us for one, and all of them just had tremendous turnout. So we're like, okay, like maybe we're on to something. Let's see where this goes.
Nice. Yeah, the debut is very strong too. I was just listening to it again today and I was like, yes, I can see why this is happening. It's very good.
Thank you. It is a little, I don't know that you feel this way, but sometimes when you have like a recording after that, you listen to the original and you're like, there's so many things I would have done differently.
Yeah.
But
we're working on our LP now. I don't even want to listen to the EP. Like we have a show coming up, so we're practicing EP songs again. And I was saying to the rest of the guys, I was like, this is weird. This just feels weird. Like I'm already on to the next thing.
I think we play the songs like differently now, which is fine. But now like it did spur us into action with like actually putting out Souvenir, because essentially what had happened was in August, we reached out to the label. We said, hey, we would love to put a record out next year. When would you need masters by? And I think we had 3 songs at the time. And Iodine said, well, you're going to need to get masters to us in February. So between August and February, we had to write most of the record.
Wow. So what is your writing / practicing schedule like at that time?
We were practicing twice a week. We had homework. So we would say basically like by the end of next week, we need a bass line for this part. I would write vocal parts while I was walking the dogs. And it would just be about whatever like was happening in my life at the time. Right. Like it's, we were on such an accelerated timeline that we really had to make sure we weren't missing the ball on anything. And then we spent one weekend at our guitarist Eric's cabin up in Tahoe doing demoing, kind of getting really deep into certain parts, everything from like what kind of fill should go here to like, do we even keep this song? We ended up scrapping one of the songs for the record when we were out there. But yeah, it was a very structured process.
Yes, and the LP is Souvenir. It's going to be out July 18th on Iodine Recordings. So I'm excited to hear the rest of it, and I know everybody else is too. What's the overall theme for the record? Is there one? And when and how does that come together as everybody's writing?
Yeah, we had a lot of conversations about what we thought, like, we'll talk about what the individual songs are about and then see what thematic elements were through it. There was a lot of stuff about identity, finding home, about walls and barriers, boundaries, ideas like that. And it became really clear that there's a sense in which the songs on the record are about how, on some level, like, we build our communities, we build our sense of self. Like, what's within you that you can control, right? Like I think like a lot of hardcore bands will write songs about like that can be a little bit preachy about like how to live or how to be a good person. But these songs are a little bit more like, I think, internal, about like doing this stuff isn't easy. Sometimes it's really hard to challenge your own biases or to be an honest or kind person. Like that isn't always the easy thing to do. And, I think in the end, what ended up happening was we were trying to figure out what the artwork would be. And RJ had a dream almost, where he said, should we consider like a diorama? And so our friend Trina built a model of a miniature living room and kitchen. And then we had it photographed by our friend Derek on a workbench. So when you open up the liner notes of the record, it looks like someone is constructing a hyper realistic miniature version of their home. And you can actually see, it's funny, it's actually RJ's fingers in there, and he's like placing items, or he has one where he's like brushing a rug. But the idea is ultimately that like we build our sense of home. That's not something, that's not a place. It's not somewhere else. It's in you. Right. And so I think that's where a lot of those thematic elements came from. And I think the idea of a souvenir, it's something you carry with you. Right. So like this sense of home, the sense of like identity and self, that's something that you build and you take with you where you go. So it's not like a prog rock record or like a big headed concept, but it was just a kind of common theme throughout the record.
Yeah, I like that. I actually read a quote. You said, I was thinking about how we don't need to look elsewhere to build a better world or to overcome our histories, which is some of what you were just explaining. Yeah, I had a moment with that last year where I just realized that everything I needed was right there in front of me the whole time, right? Like my oldest friends are still my oldest friends. I just needed to tap back into that and reconnect with them. The music that I loved was always there. And I needed to reconnect with that. Playing music itself, I needed to reconnect with that. So it was like a long circle in life to come back to find like, oh, everything I need is right here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a great way to think of it.
So you recorded with Jack Shirley, who we know loves to record live to tape. Was it all live to tape, all the music? Like, talk about some of that process, because that sounds scary to me.
RJ said it was scary too. We'd wanted to, at least a couple of us had really wanted to work with Jack for a long time. I mentioned Comadre. He played guitar in that band, and they were a huge part of the scene I grew up in. Like in the Bay Area, it was like Comadre. There's another band called Shinobu, who were both like DIY stalwarts. The way from where I sat, they really changed the way I thought about a show, and the boundaries between like the band and its fans, or bands and other bands, or whatever else is going on. And so we'd seen we'd listened to, of course, like all of Jack's records, everything from like Joyce Manor and Loma Prieta through like Deaf Heaven and Jeff Rosenstock. And he does this incredible job of capturing a band as it is. But it was, when we were going in, he kept telling us like, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. You wrote these songs, you know them better than anybody. Like, just come in, it'll be fine. And so the first round, we would basically do drums, bass, and guitars live to tape. I did the vocals after. So we did a digital bounce, and then did, I think, most of the vocals on the digital. It's like split between the digital bounce and some of it on the tape. But most of the music was done live to tape. We have some parts that are just they're a little bit tricky because like the guitars might be like hitting a number of pedals. There might be like in those areas we wanted to make sure that it still sounded pretty seamless. But honestly, like working with Jack is easier than we were expecting. It's still stressful. You still feel like a little bit of like, is this good enough? And he does a really good job of reminding you that like, don't make this too hard on yourself. Like, you guys wrote these songs, like play them the way you play them, and it's going to sound amazing. And I'm feeling really proud of what we did, because it definitely came out sounding about as good as we could have hoped.
Yeah, I can attest for everyone listening. It sounds fantastic. Was it really hard for you to do vocals? Does it take you a little bit to get warmed up? I did very aggressive vocals for the first time in a long time on the Memory Entry EP, and it was incredibly difficult. And I blew my voice out a bunch of times, and I almost passed out once. Like, how was it for you?
Ooh, yeah. So when I was younger, like I recorded with, um, all of my early recording experience was with like Zach Oren, who's done like some of the early ceremony stuff. He also has recorded like Machine Head and a couple bands like that. And then with my old guitarist, Sam, and both of them were the kind of engineers who were really good at eliciting a really passionate performance. They would both really be like, "Viggy, you can do better. You can always go a little deeper. You have more in the tank." And so I still feel like I have like a pretty good gauge of like what I'm capable of. So the trickier part was pacing myself, because we were in the studio for 5.5 days, and I would do some songs. Like I'd probably like knock out most of 3 songs and then call it for the day. And then the next day would come back in, do another couple of songs, call it. And then after we finished recording, I went back in and did just a couple of little overlays and parts I think I could have done just a little bit better, because it's fatiguing, right? It's exhausting. You're in there just like trying to put in 110%, and it can really take it out of you. There were definitely times where I felt like I was going to pass out. So you're not the only one that feels that way.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough, but I got it done, and so did you, because everything sounds great.
Yeah, it is like kind of, I feel like there's so many recordings where when you're doing melodic stuff, like there are a lot of engineers will like throw a ton of like slapback effect or auto tune or whatever else on there. And because we're recording with Jack is just capturing it as it is. So that was, I think, like a little bit of a trickier part, because I knew I wanted to sing more on this record than I did on the EP. And so it was, I definitely I was hyper cognizant of wanting to make sure that the singing performances were really good. Because if I'm doing a bunch of screaming or yelling later on, it's going to be harder for me to come back and try and sing melodically after all that. It would have, that would have sucked.
Yeah, I'm impressed by vocalists who can sing and do very aggressive hardcore vocals just back and forth like that, because I mean, I've recorded and done all aggressive, and that's really hard, and I've recorded and done mostly singing, and that's hard too, just in a different way.
Yeah, no, for sure. In my earlier bands, I only sang. So like, this is actually like kind of it's the yelling and screaming that's actually newer for me.
Yeah. Was it hard for you to learn how to do that?
Yeah, yeah, it was. There's there are a lot of bands that like I felt, or a lot of vocalists that I felt really inspired by, that I hope I'm not copying them too closely, but Aaron Weiss from Me Without You is a huge influence on me. And so, I would kind of drive around in my car and just, yell along to his song, or to their songs. And then, you mentioned This Day Forward. Mike is also a huge influence on me. I think like he's like, those are probably 2 of my biggest vocal influences. And they both are vocalists who sing and yell and scream. They do it all. And so I kind of liked the idea that like, hey, like we can do a little bit of everything here.
Mm-hmm.
So it was hard, but it depends. Like when I'm in rhythm, like when we're like touring or when I'm playing like a bunch of shows back to back, I feel like I can like actually like control my voice better. It's harder when we're doing like a one-off, or like I'm not adequately warmed up or not getting enough practice in.
Right. If there's a one-off show, I'm struggling to get through it, and my voice is kind of blown out, even practice still. But we did play 2 shows one day after another before, and the first day I was a little shaky, and then the next day I was like, oh, I got this. So I could see how if you're on like multiple week or multiple month tour, you just get locked in.
Yeah, like being like tour solid is a real thing. Like at the end of our West Coast run, we were like, wow, like let's keep going, and we sound better than ever. Everyone's super locked in. And like there's moments where like when it's your first show of tour, you'll like, one person might make a mistake, you might be like a little bit off rhythm, you can't like catch yourself. But by the end of it, you almost don't need to even hear the stick clicks. You know exactly what the tempo of the song is. You know exactly what's going to happen. If you mess up, you know exactly where to jump in, and like it's the best feeling because there's you can just kind of lose yourself in the music at that point. You don't need to overthink anything.
Right, right. So I was pleasantly surprised to meet you at the This Day Forward show last August. I did not expect you to be there, but that was awesome. You're like, hey, it's Viggy from Drought, and I was like, oh, right. And I was like, wait, you came here for this? That's awesome. When did you get turned on to This Day Forward first? How? When did that happen?
I found them back in, I want to say 2002, the Kairos EP. And I think because I was like listening to a lot of Thursday at the time, and Jeff had a guest appearance on that record. And then when In Response came out, I got to see him in San Francisco at the Pound. And they were incredible. It was like them, Since by Man, and Christensen, I'm pretty sure. And they I just thought that band did a wonderful job of like their songs that are like personal, but also like political. There's stuff that's inward looking. There's stuff that's outward looking. There's a really great mix of melody and dissonance. And then they broke up. So, I was like hoping that I would hear something more. The following year, when I started at UC Santa Cruz, Circa Survive came and stayed at our house when they were touring through the West Coast. So I definitely had a chance to talk to Colin and Brendan about This Day Forward back then. And then eventually Colin ended up marrying a friend of mine from San Jose. So it was like a very felt like, now it's like a couple of degrees separation from one of my absolute favorite bands. So of course, when they were reuniting, I knew I wanted to try and make it to those shows. So I bought a ticket to the one in Philly and then one in New York as well.
So you were at the New York show?
I was.
I forget if I saw you there. Yeah, that was Memory Entry's second show. So that was really nerve-wracking because Bowery Ballroom is a big venue and I've never played on a stage that high before. So I was like, oh man. But
Y'all were great. That was so much fun.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that was like the best night ever. I was on a high for months after that night. And that's what I'm talking about, like going for full circle and realizing like everything is right there. It was that night because I'm with my best friends who are in This Day Forward. All the bands who played were great. Like it was just like, oh, everything is here. This is it. And I'm playing in a band again. So what else could there be? Nothing.
Yeah, it was magical.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, yeah, it was great to see you there. And hopefully we will cross paths again. We have to. You're going to be out here at some point, right?
Yeah, we're hoping to make it out there. So we're still planning some kind of tour schedule around Fest in Gainesville. Still figuring out whether it's going to be an East Coast run or trying to do the South. But we're definitely planning to make it to New York and hopefully Philly, Boston, DC. It's been a dream of mine to tour the East Coast for a very long time. So, what better time than now?
Yeah, it is a dream of mine to tour any coast in the band I'm in now. So I'm going to try to make, we want to. We're going to do I'm going to try to book some East Coast stuff first. And then, I don't know, maybe next year, West Coast, we'll see. But, one step at a time, right?
Yeah. No, that's real. We're still doing everything ourselves, right? And so sometimes there's it's a little bit harder than I think. Like some bands, they've got like a booking agent and this and that, but like when you're doing it yourself, you're your best advocate, right? So you got to put in that work.
Yeah, I'm doing it myself. On Souvenir, we've got a lot of great guest appearances. Pat Flynn from Have Heart and Fiddlehead, Infant Island, Mom Jeans. So Iodine put you in touch with Pat Flynn, right?
They did. Our guitarist Eric. This is actually pretty funny. He was listening to a podcast interview with, I want to say, with Aaron from Me Without You, and Aaron was asked how Jeremy Enoch from Sunny Day Real Estate ended up on their record Brother Sister, And Aaron said, they found out that they shared either like a same agent, or there was some connection. Someone knew him, and they were like, well, like, would love to have him on if he's able to. And Eric was like, like, Have Heart is like one of the reasons that I'm making music today. And when he brought up that he wanted to have Pat on the record, I was absolutely stoked, because like one of the things I've always like appreciated about that band is the amount of sort of dedication they had to doing it right. Like, I can't think of another hardcore band that was like, we're not just going to tour Europe and Japan and call it a world tour. We're going to tour Africa, and we're going to do it DIY. And I'd heard him on a different podcast. Like, Pat had referenced like a hardcore band in India. And I was like, wow, like he's actually paying attention to stuff globally, and like cares a lot about building a scene that's like bigger than just the bands in his backyard. And that's just like super inspirational. So I was like, yeah, like we should 100% have him on the record if he's down. So Iodine, Casey at Iodine made the intro, and we kind of reached out cold and said, hey, like, would you be interested in hopping on a track? And he responded with, sounds cool. And I think he was concerned that he might not have the bandwidth, or like that it might be difficult, because he's busy, he's got a lot going on. And so we wanted to make it as easy on him as possible. Jay Moss, decided to help us out, and had Pat come by his studio and record a part. And it was amazing, honestly. Like, in my mind, I always thought that song sounded unfinished without Pat's part in there. So when I finally got to hear it with him, I was like, oh my God, like this is exactly how I heard it in my head. It's even better, honestly.
That's awesome. It's almost like fate, how it all comes together.
Yeah. And then, both the Infant Island and Mom Jeans appearances, those are, they're both friends of ours. Alex from Infant Island, he actually volunteered to fly up to do it. He was like, I would love to be on the record. And we were like, yeah, like we love everything that you've done as well. Would love to make it happen. And then Eric from Mom Jeans, he'd seen us a couple of times. And he would like post video on Instagram of us playing, and we were like, whoa, like that's cool. Like I love Mom Jeans, got to, seen him a bunch of times, and I was like, maybe he'd be willing to hop on as well. So it was, and he was like, absolutely. Both of them came through the studio on the same day, and took care of it within like one or two takes. It was great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love everything I've heard so far, and I'm looking forward to hearing the rest. What else is going on? Is there anything announced that we can talk about? Well, we've got Fest, right?
Yep. We're playing New Friends Fest in Toronto as well in August.
That's another great fest. Do you know Egan from Respire?
Oh yeah, I love Egan.
Yeah, he's a fellow band guy / lawyer. He might even be somewhat in the same neighborhood of law as you. I had him on the show fairly recently, and he was talking about it. So I was like, I hope those two guys know each other.
It's funny because I'm in Toronto right now. I should probably reach out to him. We've hung out a bunch of times, and he's lovely.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and that's a great fest too. The lineup is always killer.
Yeah, On the Might of Princes are playing. There's I'm really looking forward to catching Snowing, and goodness, Bon Iver is having a reunion. So I'm pretty pumped about that. And then we're having a record release show the week after with Cold God, Fawning, and New Moon in San Francisco. It's the first like shoegaze lineup that we've played, but we all love mixed bills. Like I think partially because like we sometimes straddle between like the hardcore stuff, the kind of emo-y stuff, the kind of shoegazy stuff. So it's nice to be able to play a show that's a little bit diverse. And then we're going to be playing Fest. We'll probably announce a run within the next month or two. We're still figuring out some of the logistics and who we'll be doing it with, but really looking forward to that one because, ton of bands that we've wanted to see, Bane, of course, being an important one, but Fucked Up is playing as well, which is really exciting. So, we can't wait.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing and seeing more. And Viggy, I just want to say thanks for coming on the show. It was great running into you and meeting you at the This Day Forward show. And we will meet again. I know it's going to happen. It has to.
Absolutely. I'll reach out when we're on the East Coast.
And there you have it. Viggy Ram. Excellent conversation. Very happy to have Viggy on the show. Very happy that he seems to know a lot of people that I know and that he has a relationship with some of the guys from This Day Forward. And I hope everybody's checking out Souvenir. Again, it just came out this past Friday. It's excellent. A very, very, very strong debut. Check out the EP too, the self-titled EP if you haven't heard it. Really good stuff. And I hope I get to see the band soon. And I hope I get to see Viggy soon. It was very nice personal conversation. It was interesting hearing about his past and coming up in the Bay Area scene. And I'm really glad that he made it through everything he was dealing with during the pandemic. It was a rough time. And it's always uplifting to hear about someone circling back to music and just coming back to it after a while. It's never too late. So again, great conversation. And thank you so much, Viggy, for coming on the show. So let's check in. How are we doing? I am doing great. I've had the past week off from work, and I went on a trip earlier this week, camping trip in Maine. Not like on a tent on the ground. I used to do that. I used to go on a camping trip every year, but I don't think I want to sleep outside on the ground anymore. I think I'm past that. On the trip was me and my friends Mike Shaw, Colin Frangisetto, and Vadim Taver, who are all in This Day Forward, who have all been on the show before. You've heard from them, and my girlfriend was on the trip as well. Haven't taken a trip like that in a very long time, but it was good to be mostly disconnected with friends, hanging out, connecting with people. Great time. And I haven't hung out with Colin for a long stretch of time since we were like 21 years old. I didn't realize just how much I have in common with him. So that was nice. And the trip was nice. I'm back. I've been doing band practice. I've been working on the podcast, this episode, all weekend. And I'm getting ready for our show tomorrow with Signal Hill and North End. So I hope that goes well. But we're ready, and we're continuing to write music and push things forward with memory entry. Besides that, everything's been okay. Things have been busy. My day job is very busy. I haven't been checking in as much at the end of the show. One, because I don't have time. And two, I don't really have a lot to say. I don't want to just come on every week and be like, yep, I went to band practice again and we're writing an LP. All right, see you later. Oh, yeah, I worked all week again and then me and my girlfriend went out to dinner. All right, see you later. Everything's good. Everything is good. And my time is pretty much just spent with the people in my life and working on this podcast and the band. And that's pretty much all that's been going on. I sneak in time to play some games when I can as well. Have you ever played Black Mesa, Half-Life Part 1? I'm playing through it for the first time, and I love it. I've been working on that for the past couple months. And then I might jump back into some Resident Evil stuff after that, because I've never played Resident Evil 3, 4, 7, or 8. And, 9 just got announced, so I would like to take part in that once it comes out. And that's pretty much everything that's going on. So let's move into the New Scene Community Hour. Oh, but first, let's do some commentary on some recent episodes because I haven't checked in a while. Harper Boy Terry of Greet Death. So great to have her on the show. Have you heard Die in Love? Have you heard it? You need to. It might be the best record of the year. I don't know. It's top 2 for sure. And Emptiness is Everywhere is an absolutely amazing song. I've been listening to that one a lot. Having Harper on the show again, getting to hear her story, getting to hear all about the making of the new Greet Death record. Amazing. Matt O'Brien from No Lights. Make sure you check out No Lights. Solid band. Solid dude. I can't wait to get out there to the West Coast and hopefully play some shows with Matt And we also had Emmett Siglia from Detach the Islands on that episode. I got to meet, Emmett plays in a husbandry too. Got to meet him when my band played with husbandry. The guy's in a lot of good bands. He's doing a lot of great stuff, and he's a phenomenal drummer. So go check it out. Andrew Falkus of McCluskey. Wow, what a surprise, amazing interview that was. Very nice, just conversation that jumped around a lot. And McCluskey is a really good band who just got on my radar recently. So if you have not heard them, check out their latest LP. It just came out on Ipecac Recordings. Great band. Great guy, too. Really solid. Nice talking to him. Lemus Garcia of Stateside. Another very pleasant conversation. And their debut LP is super strong. Make sure you go check that out. And Tim Singer and Dave Rosenberg of Dead Guy. Wow. I'm glad that I was able to get Dave on the show, too. You know, just hearing things from Tim's perspective. Oh, we didn't get the Tim backstory last time he was on the show, too. You know, coming up in New York hardcore and his fanzine and No Escape and everything else. So it was great to get all that and hear about the making of the new Dead Guy record too. And Dave's perspective with the more technical side and the musical writing side and everything else that Dave shared about the making of the new Dead Guy record. Blockbuster episode. Amazing stuff. By the way, make sure you check out the new Dead Guy record. Near Death Travel Services. I finally listened to the whole thing driving back from Maine. And A+, that was the best. That was one of the best parts about the trip, was getting to catch up with a lot of music. I made a list of like 20 albums I've been meaning to catch up on, and we listened to those on the way to the trip and on the way back. I don't have the list here with me, or I'd share it with you, but you know, it's some older stuff and a lot of fairly recent stuff that has come out as well. A nice mix of both, and it helps that my girlfriend has almost the same exact taste in music as I do. So. No weirdness in the car while listening to the music. That's the best. All right, let's read some YouTube comments. Episode 289 with Andrew Falkus of McCluskey. Shambles44 says, legend. Yes, he is a legend. Episode 282 with Michael Girard of Swans. Artichoked1 says, interviewer is a bit shit. Keeps changing subject when Michael clearly has more to say and doesn't keep the flow. Artichoke, I do not agree with you. Now, that episode was not the best pairing. I don't know if you know anything about this show, but we get super personal on this show, and Michael did not want to do that. So I felt limited in the things that I could discuss. And I haven't mentioned this at all about this interview yet, but we did it on Zoom, and there was a huge delay. Like, there was a huge delay between when I stopped talking and what Michael heard, and then when he stopped talking. And that made it very difficult to do the interview to begin with. So we couldn't do like a back and forth discussion. I had to like talk, and then there was a gap, and then he would start talking, and then I would have to wait. And that made the discussion difficult. So that's a pretty polarizing interview, but most of the feedback has been positive, so whatever. Episode 110 with Andrew Lowe of the Jazz June. Curious CY says, can you interview one of the guys from Ethel Meserve? I'd like to learn more about them. Maybe. I actually went on YouTube and checked them out, and they're really good, so maybe at some point. Episode 285 with Tim Singer and Dave Rosenberg of Dead Guy. Morris Mine says, this was an awesome conversation with both guys. Much better to do this kind of thing separately than with all three guys at the same time. Also, shout out to Palm, the Japanese band Dave mentioned. They played on their Japanese tour. Absolutely incredible live band. The vocalist, Toshi, is a legend. Awesome. I got to check those out. Thank you for that comment. Episode 216 with Aaron Stauffer of Seaweed. Tom says, love Seaweed. I love Seaweed too. That was a great one. Episode 284 with Adam Turla of Murder by Death. Uncle Bingo says, just saw night one of the tour and it was amazing. End of era, but damn, what a ride. If I had to do it over, I just would have done it slower. I like that. And Melody Ramquist said this about the same episode. Adam, I was actually so worried about you when I listened to this album, but after this interview, I better understand where these songs are coming from. We're excited to get to see Murder by Death on the tour multiple times, including the final show. I hope your vision board fills up and becomes reality. You deserve all the things. Love from the PNW. Keith, thanks for having Adam on your show, and I'll be checking out more of your podcasts. Thank you, Melody. And one more here that I've been meaning to address. Episode 282, again, with Michael Girard of Swans. Dimbas says, how did you get to interview Girard? Dimbus, I don't know if that's supposed to be a dig or if you're just genuinely curious, but the short answer is I've built up this platform over the past 5+ years, and it's built up enough to the point where artists want to come on and the people who represent them know about me. So I get pitched guests, and when I get an interesting pitch, I have them on the show. So that's how I got to interview Michael Drought. Thank you. So that's it for this week. That is everything that's going on. I hope everyone out there is doing great. I am continuing to take music out of episodes and repost them so that they can get back on Spotify. I got a ton of copyright strikes, and I had to take a bunch of episodes down from Spotify. So if you're on Spotify and you see an episode is missing, just know that it's on Apple Podcasts and Amazon and YouTube and everywhere else. And I'm in the process of getting those all reposted. So you'll see those reposts on Fridays. There's probably like 20, 25 episodes that I have to repost. So look for those on Fridays. They're coming, but only once a week. If you want to hear all of the music associated with the show, check out the New Scene 2025 Spotify playlist. It has all of my recommendations there and every guest who's been on the show if their music is on Spotify. I'm back next week with a new episode and 2 new guests, and I'll see you then.